everybody here. First of all, we're so excited to have you joining us along with Martin, who I will formally introduce in just a couple minutes. But really quick though, I always like to go over housekeeping, just all the basic stuff. First of all, this webinar is being recorded. So this webinar is being recorded. So if you need to hop off, or if you have a friend or colleague who had to miss it, it's okay. It's being recorded. You'll be able to access it actually right after if you go to the registration link, but I'll also make sure to post it on our YouTube channel by the end of the day. And it'll also be on academy.travefy.com. So it'll all be up. So it'll be available for you. And then the other thing is that there actually will be, thank you to Martin, there will be a handout. So you will have a takeaway item after today's session. And I'll make sure that that's available. I'll put that in the chat once it's time to reveal it. But it'll also be on academy.travefy.com. So just FYI on that, it'll be available there. And then the other thing is we plan to have a Q&A with Martin, just pick his brain on everything. So be sure to put those questions, use the question box in the Zoom panel, and then I'll be in there watching those. We also have Scott in the back. For those who know good old pal Scott from the team, he'll be in the back too, kind of helping out just with making sure everything's flowing and questions are going to get answered and all that good stuff. Okay. To get started here. So now, very exciting, again, that we have everybody ready to go. But I always like to say, though, for anyone new joining us for Travefy Academy. So if you're new to Travefy Academy, I always just like to share a quick description of, why we host these education and free webinars like this one today. And it's really because Travefy Academy was just created to help further Travefy's mission of just helping travel professionals succeed in their business. So we want to help you succeed. So Travefy Academy, we don't actually focus on Travefy as a product. Sometimes it comes up and we won't stop it from coming up. But this is more, just about how you can, increase your sales and revenue and make your job better. So that's really what all these are. And the cool thing is we get to work with so many different advisors, organizations in the industry that we get to bring in, like Martin. So that's what's super exciting about Academy. And you can check out, again, all previous webinars, upcoming webinars at academy.travefy.com as well. But okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce Martin Mussey, or as many like to call him, Coach Martin. We're going to call him Coach Martin today because that's what he will be for us today. He is Business Development and Education Manager at Nexion Travel Group. So welcome, Martin. So good to have you on here and everything working seamlessly.
I know, finally. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So I know we're gonna jump into a presentation, correct? And
yes.
do you want me to share my screen, or do you want to run it?
Yeah, I'll let you share your screen.
Okay.
Unless for some reason I will be back up, if anything. That's a good thing.
So bear with me here just a moment from my educational days. We're going to do this here. Yes, that is working very well. So I know how to move this around and do this. This is what I'm going to share here. Let me know if you can see the screen.
Oh, yeah, looks good. Perfect.
All right. So awesome, looking good. Anything else you wanted to mention before I jump into this?
Well, so I was just going to see if you could give a quick overview just on, how you got started in the industry and why do they call you Coach Martin, and share a little bit about that. And then what we'll be talking about today is, of course, too.
Yeah. So how I got into the industry, it was, like many of you that are listening to this call, I had this opportunity, a moment in life. It was actually in both my life and my wife's, where, we're between jobs and what are we going to do, and realizing that, we kind of need to take control of our own destiny. And we thought, what are we passionate about? And we're passionate about travel. We love traveling. And so we decided to get into and become travel advisors. And we sort of did the research like all of you may have, or many of you, on, I don't know, which host agency. There's so much information. We kind of almost did this and just pointed at something. No, not we had some science behind it, but we ended up picking a host at the time. So I got into it first being an independent advisor, like many of you. And but from that, I simultaneously was running my own business coaching practice, something that I had started after a 16-year career in a corporate world, 12 of those years in human resources. And what I loved most in that role was developing and helping people be the best that they could be, realizing the best in themselves for their own future success. So I started a business coaching practice, which I kept very separate from travel. But then one day, those two worlds collided when I kind of looked up and realized, wait a minute, people in this industry need help with how to market, how to sell, how to make decisions like what we're going to talk about today. So I really started to niche my business coaching practice to the world of travel. And one thing led to the next. Next Travel Group had the forethought to be looking for a business coach, and I was saw this job posting and literally applied for it. And here I am. I told my wife when I had done that, because I own my own business, that hey, guess what? I just applied for a job. She said, really? I said, yeah, I think it's got me written all over it. Business coach and the world of travel. And the two were forever married. And I'm all about just helping make sure that people live the best life that they can live through creating a business that is theirs. And that's really how I got into coaching. I focus on new advisor development at Next Travel Group. But since I've been with them a little over 5 years, all of our new people that I started out with became experienced advisors. So I also do a fair amount of experienced advisor coaching as well. And the moniker of Coach Martin actually just began during my business coaching practice. And when I would be in networking groups and things like that, the most identifiable, you got to brand yourself and things. And I would literally say, I was part of a franchise called Action Coach, and I would literally stand in front of a networking group and say, I am your action man, and take the superhero pose and all that sort of stuff. And so with that, it just became Action Man and Coach Martin. And, so that's how I became Coach Martin, and it's just stuck ever since.
I love it, Coach Martin. It's perfect. And one quick thing. I think your we can see the PowerPoint like slides. So I don't know if you have to
Hmm.
adjust that or maybe click the resume slideshow maybe. I wasn't sure if it was just oh yeah, move
How's
that.
that?
There
Is that
you
better?
go. Perfect. Okay. That looks great.
Okay. I think we're there. Is that
Yeah.
good?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're ready.
All right. Well, so let me pause for a moment before we go on into the slides here and just share with you. I'm very excited to be here with Travefy and the partnership that we have. And this is a question that comes up all the time. And I mean, I'm talking to advisors on a daily basis, in Nexion, out of Nexion, and a lot of people are saying, "Boy, I am sure getting busy." Which is a fantastic, problem to have. And they're getting busier, and they may be at a point where they're potentially turning away business because they alone or they themselves can't handle all of the business they have. So the first immediate thought that comes to mind is a lot of people sort of say, well, then I'm thinking about adding an IC. What do you think? And I think, that initial thought is really, really good, but we need to explore a couple things about your desire and want for an IC. We sort of tend to think, and a lot of advisors I've spoken to, they sort of think, well, if I just get another advisor on board, they can help offload some of this other stuff. There's specialties that I don't handle. Maybe they can do it. Maybe they can handle it. And it may or may not be as easy as just that. So I kind of want to walk you through almost like a checklist, a mental checklist of things that you really should take into consideration. And the first one that we're going to consider is this. Why? Oh, let's see. Here we go. Will this advance this way? Here we go. So why bring on an independent contractor in the first place? So in thinking about this topic, You know, I had, as I mentioned, talked to a number of advisors, and just so you know, some of this content came out of us here at Nexion working closely with our own advisory board. And our advisory board is made up of other independent advisors, just like many of you. And we said to them, hey, what are some things you want to know? So a lot of the content in this presentation is based on people doing the role, doing the job, being at this point of this question and telling us this is what we want to know or need to know about the possibility of adding an independent contractor. So the first order of business really is, why bring on an independent contractor? It's a very important question that could change the conversation or the direction that you go. So in other words, what do you really want to do? Is it all about that you want to grow revenue for the agency? Do you just want to handle an overflow of current business opportunities? Maybe you want to diversify your portfolio of business. You want to expand into a different niche, have different offerings, specializations, all of that. But perhaps you have another reason. When I really dig into it with a number of advisors, one of those reasons is that I have too much to do administratively. And when you think administratively, then the question becomes, do I really want an independent contractor, or do I just need an assistant or an employee? Maybe that's the route that you should be thinking. Now, for some people, having a virtual assistant is the answer. And that isn't about having an employee or paying anyone in terms of salary. It's almost like using a service, a third party service that could be somebody like a virtual assistant. I know a number of people who have done that, and it's been so helpful to them. They may either use a fee for service third party to do that. They may work directly with somebody, but that's the decision point. Maybe you really need an office manager, dependent upon the size of your agency. Maybe you need an office manager, an administrative manager, more than you need an independent contractor. Because if you can be freed up to go do the things that you want to do, then maybe you can be a better advisor if some of these other things are freed up to and including accounting, bookkeeping, and outsourcing some of these things. So I think you understand. And again, we'll go back to that screen here. What are the reasons why you want an independent contractor? What is it that you really need to get off of your plate? So let's move forward knowing that, okay, I want an independent contractor and I want somebody who's going to help with the growth of the business and all of that. So here's some things for consideration. For consideration, you want to know, is the person you're considering somebody who's experienced or new to the industry? What is their own personal travel experience? Because adding an independent contractor, it's a really big step. And I'm not really sure that people really think through all of the considerations. You might just think to yourself that this is a no risk way to add a revenue to my business, because the idea and notion of an independent contractor is I would only pay them for what they bring in and the business that they make. So for a lot of people, mentally, they sort of think, yeah, no risk, no problem. Um, and this way, I'll also have more than me just working on this business. And we sometimes trick ourselves into thinking, I need someone else helping me. But there really is more to think about. So, yeah, what's their experience in the industry, their own personal travel experience? Do they have an area of specialization that's going to benefit your agency? I know a lot of advisors who do a variety of different diversified portfolio, but they don't love Disney, for example. But then they get somebody who's super passionate about Disney, and that person has the experience. They love it. They dig into it. Some agency owners are very happy to pass that on to somebody else. You want to know, does the person that you're considering to be an IC, do they plan to work full-time or part-time? You both need to walk in knowing this. Do they have a strong sales ability? They may be interested and excited about travel, but what is their experience around it? And I'm not saying that you wouldn't select somebody just because they've never sold something, but maybe there's something in their background that gives them some of the skill set, even some of the soft skills that are going to make them good for sales. Because let's face it, this is a sales job, one we love, and we love talking about travel, but it is sales. Are they personable in terms of that personality? And then what a lot of people sometimes don't consider is their own agency culture and values. So if you've done your work up front as an agency owner and a business owner, you've thought about, what is the culture that I want to create? What are my values of my business? And does this person fit that culture? They may or may not. Here's a couple other things for you to consider, is that you are um, we tend to trust, and this is where I'm coming from on this slide. If you're like me, most of us tend to trust. Some are very, inquisitive, are going to ask a lot of questions, and that's going to serve you well. So we can't just take people at their word all the time. And I know that's hard to say, because like I said, my fallback is trust. I trust you until proven wrong, but you have to check references. If they're saying to, especially somebody who's experienced, yes, I worked in this other agency, I had lots of sales, help find that out. Ask the questions. If you need to, ask for a reference so you can call somebody else at that other agency, if it's allowable and they're outside of a non-compete, that to ask, what were their sales? How are they as a salesperson? What have they done to demonstrate these qualities? All right. Are they a goal and results oriented type of person? Are they self-motivated? And sometimes you can ferret that out a little bit, but just look to see from their past career. And let's be realistic here. A lot of times, most of the time actually, that I hear that somebody's thinking of adding an IC, is it's a friend or a family member who's like, hey, how can I get into this business? Hey, can I help you? And you really have to look real closely at that. All right. Understand all these things. Um, Now, you also want to consider, what potential business or networking opportunities do they represent? Maybe they have access to a different group of people than you do. So while it feels good to help a new person, get into this business, um, you you have to take these things into consideration. Technology aptitude. Are they ready to jump into and not be so overwhelmed with all the potential technology that exists? Where are they? How do they feel? Are they good at learning stuff? Okay. Um, and who do they turn to if they have questions? Because you have to know that you're going to be available to them if they ask questions, and more on that here in just a little bit. All right. So those are some considerations to think about. Now we're going to talk about pay structure. When you think about pay structure, you have to, again, think of a number of things and have them in mind. Because this is really all about the basics, and nothing gets more basic than our own need to know how we're going to make money, right? So it stands to reason that you have to consider how you will pay an IC. You want to consider how much commission you'll pay the independent contractor if you give them a lead. Consider how much commission you'll pay if they bring the lead to the business. Is it different? And I'm not saying it has to be different, but these are things you want to consider. If I give you the lead, does it have a different structure? If you bring me the lead, you get the bulk of it, and that has a different structure. Or is it level? Doesn't matter. It's all the same. Hey, you're the business owner. You get to decide these things. Once you have experience with a couple of ICs, you'll know what's working, what's not working, and what you might need to consider that you hadn't considered before. So I've, again, talked to a number of advisors who brought on their first and their second ICs. Some of them didn't work out, and they got better at understanding their structure, what they needed to do, how they needed to work better with an IC and make it interesting and palatable to them as well from a pay and compensation perspective, and they got better at it. All right. Consider a higher commission tier when the independent contractor reaches a set number of sales. What I mean by that is, in other words, they come into your organization at a smaller commission percentage, and we'll talk some more specifics about that here in a little bit. And as they bring more sales to you and to the business, then they exponentially increase. Let's say from a 60% commission split to a 70, then to an 80, etc. You see what I mean? Okay. And consider if the compensation split is based on your original supplier commission or agency commission. So a number of you I know out there are in different situations. You may be with the host agency, you may be on your own. So you have to take into consideration what's coming out of the commission that's coming to you, if it's flowing through a host, or do you get all of that yourself? And then what is that you're willing to pay the independent contractor? All right, so that's a little bit on pay structure. A little bit more here about the pay structure is that you want to consider if you will collect a monthly fee or subsidize it. Now, monthly fees may come in if you're working with a host agency and they charge you monthly to be a part of the organization. And as a part or selling under a host, if you have any fees, you're going to have to decide whether you will charge your IC that fee and have them pay for it, subsidize all of it, or just a portion of it. The other big one you really need to take into consideration is errors and omissions. So again, dependent upon your situation, your errors and omissions may be covered by the agency you belong to. You may have purchased your own errors and omissions, and you'll want to put a pause on the conversations if and what happens is people get really excited and things are moving along really fast and they forget to reach out to or talk to who they need to about errors and omissions. What does it cost to add this independent contractor to my own errors and omissions? And now I would usually say to all of you that errors and omissions is something that is part of a business. So you have to decide whether that's just the cost of doing business and I just include it, add them to my policy. And if it's a small incremental charge, I'm not going to worry about passing that on to them. Or your other option is pass some of that on to the independent contractor. But do keep in mind that compensation, like we talked about before, as they ramp up their sales, they're probably more willing to participate in things of that nature. Also, consider a bonus program that's based on educational and specialization training or events that lead to an increase in sales. Not that they just took the education or they took the training, but it actually resulted in something. So maybe there's something you can provide as a bonus to incentivize them to get that specialization training, to take that additional education, but then also track their sales from that point that they added that education element to their business, and did it improve their sales and compensate them accordingly, be it via a bonus or increased commission compensation. I also recommend that your independent contractor be responsible for tracking their own earned commissions in a timely fashion, just like you all probably have to do for your agencies and whatever situation you're in. Have the same expectation of them. You don't want to be responsible. Just like in many other agencies, if you don't report it, then you don't get paid. Same thing that you would pass on to your independent contractor. So the timeline on that really should be based on your own agency model, right? If you're on a first of the 15th, if you're on a all reservations must be entered by a certain date in order to get paid, or if there's a structure, a way that the expectation, have that same expectation of your IC and pass that along to them. All right. So just point checking with you, Stephanie. I think we want to wait to the end for questions, right? As opposed to pausing and seeing if there's anything right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think they'll be good to wait for a couple. So there's some good ones coming in though, but yeah, we can wait till the end.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. All right, some independent contractor basics. Now, as you all know, I'm part of Next Travel Group, and we have a terminology inside of Next Travel Group that we refer to them as sub-agents. There may be other agencies that also might talk about them as subs. The way that I like to think about it is I draw a comparison many times in this topic. Just like if you had a general contractor for a build of a new home or a project on your house, right? There's the general contractor, which is like you, the business owner in travel, and there would be a sub under them, the independent contractor under them, the person who does the electric, the person who does the plumbing, the person who does, but the person manages all of the subs under them. So that's where our terminology of sub-agent comes in. If your agency uses sub-agent terminology, then I just want you to be aware that they are not a sub-agent when it comes to the IRS, to the Internal Revenue Service. All they know them as an independent contractor. That's the terminology for the IRS. So while there's some protections that exist for you as a business owner having an IC, in other words, you're not paying them a salary, you're only paying them under the agreement you just agreed to pay them under, etc. Here's some things you should know from an IRS perspective. So what? You cannot tell an IC what to do. So a lot of people get into this thinking, oh, I'll have somebody on my team and I can have an expectation of we're open between this hour and you must be by the phone. You can't do that. Okay. Now you can give them an understanding of what you would like from your business, for your business, why you're looking to have an independent contractor to cover this area of the business, to have coverage on the phones during this time, if they're amenable and can do that. So, but just be aware of that. You can't tell an IC what to do. You can ask them to meet the goals. This is the goals of the business. Understand the mission, the vision, the goals of the entire business, and have them work towards that. But expectations on the what to do, all that. You can't tell an IC where they can work. You know, even if you had a storefront office and IC now, they may like that option, but you aren't in a position to tell them they must work there. You can't tell them when their work hours are, and you can't tell an IC how to do their job. You can guide them, you can do all that. Now, why is this? I'll give you a why behind it. From an IRS perspective, they're going to say if you do any of these things, you're now crossing the threshold of them being an employee. The IRS would say, well, if you want to tell them when to work, how to work, where to work, all these things, shouldn't they really be an employee if you want that kind of control? And that's the litmus test, if you will. So what can you do? What you can do is be clear on your agency vision, expectations, be a guide, be a teacher, be a visionary of your own business. Uh, and then there's some realities that you just need to contend with. And we'll talk about some of those next. So it is all about being the business owner and not a travel advisor yourself. And I do recognize and understand that many of you are both business owner and travel advisor. I like to think of those as two separate identities within a business. So what I'm teaching you here is you're making some decisions on the business owner side of the business, not the travel advisor side. Okay. So with that, let's go on to the next here. So now, all of this brings to mind, I'm sure many of you are thinking, all right, well, this is all good. Don't I have to have some sort of contract or understanding about how this is going to be? And you're going to see here on the slide that I've termed it an independent contractor terms of agreement and inclusion. Okay. So, a quick note about terms of agreement. As in everyday language, we may think of it as a contract, but better yet, this terms of agreement is just an understanding of the work. And it is very good to get it in writing, and it is very good to have it there for both of you. But in most states, it is not going to be a legal binding contract. What it really does is it functions as an understanding of how you work with another person who will be representing your business. So in reality, what it does is it gives you the ability to point to something in writing so that there is no misunderstanding of how it is that you're going to work together. But make no mistake, it is for the benefit of both of you and your independent contractor. And that's the way you want them to see it as well, is that it's a work statement. It's a statement of work, that term of agreement. All right. It's going to line out what are the responsibilities, theirs, and the expectations. It will address commission posting, tracking, and payments. How's that all going to work? So you've decided that all up front. You may have even had a verbal back and forth about how that's going to go. Business expenses, what are theirs? What are yours? The expectation of professionalism, right? It's these things in the terms of agreement that you'll be able to point to that if all of a sudden they represented your company very poorly at an event or with a supplier and did something that you don't deem professional, then you have the right to be able to end that agreement or say, under our terms of agreement, not contract, then I don't think this is going to work out and we need to go different ways. In the terms of agreement, you're also going to line out the compensation. This is where you would address your commission splits and terms of payment, when payments happen, all of that. So on compensation, where's a good place to start if you're not sure? Again, look to your agency splits as a possible guide. Do understand that your IC will likely be on the same commission split you are. So for example, at Next Travel Group, only at a certain level of commission split for our advisors, 80 and above, are they allowed to add a an IC or a sub-agent. If you're at 90% commission split, then all the commissions that they earn through their sales are going to be paid at your split at 90% and will typically come into your business account, banking account. And then you pay them out of your account. So you are operating a little bit like a mini payroll department. It is your responsibility to make those payments, not your host, not your agencies. You're the business owner. It does become your responsibility. So, look to your agency splits and I would recommend mirroring them for less confusion. All right. So, for example, you may be at 90, but let's say your agency brings in new folks at 60% or 70%. Often it's 60, and then once they've proven themselves, they might get up to a 70%. Then you would pay them at a 60% split. Okay. And when they've increased their split and or have increased their sales and you offer them a higher commission, then just know that whatever you're paying them, let's say 70%, it's 70% of your 90 that's coming in, unless your plan type pays you at 100%. So it's the 70% of your split, 90 or 100. Now, a little note that I put here, we say, great, a terms of agreement sounds good. Where do I get a template? Where do I get that? This isn't legal advice. I really highly suggest you go to the American Society of Travel Advisors if you're a member, because they work with their own attorneys and they do have a template agreement for ICs as a member. So you can find that there and use that as a guideline that you then can write out the agreement, take it to a legal advisor within your own community to make revisions specific to your business model. You do have to be an ASTA member to do that. I know there's other resources that are out there and third parties that you can belong to for those types of agreements, but that's the best one, and it supports our industry as well in being a member. Okay, terms of agreement and some suggested inclusions, other things that you should definitely think about including. Consider adding any sort of disclaimer to your subagent agreement, IC agreement, based on your agency business model, including that split or agreed upon arrangements. The terminations of agreement, how would you terminate them and you? Include how much notice one party must give the other party before leaving or termination. Compensation and or reimbursement. All right. So reimbursement comes in, maybe it's an event that they went to and you said, yeah, I'll go halves in with you on that event. If you complete the event, get the certification and your sales increase, I'll pay half of that event. It can vary, right? But that's what I mean by a reimbursement. Or let's say you said to your entire team, I want all of us to go. Now, I can't tell you to go, but I'd like us all to go. And they're like, yeah, sign me up. I want to go too. Maybe you've said, and I'll reimburse you for your attendance, or I'll pay for your attendance if you'd like to go. Again, it's optional, right? Ownership of clients is a very important thing to be sure is addressed in your terms of agreement. In other words, if they left your agency, who owns the clients? Is there a difference between the clients they brought you and the clients that you gave to them? Or are they all your own book of business? They're your agency's clients no matter what. I'm not giving you an answer here. I'm just giving you the ways to think about it and the different things you should consider. Payment of future commissions upon termination. So should they leave, they've given you the proper notice. How will those payments be handled? Is there a deadline? 90 days past termination, you must have all, all reservations input, and those are the only ones that will be paid out that have been entered within 30, 60, 90 days of your termination. I agree to pay those because you work that business. Again, ways for you to think about it. All right. Very important and near dear to my heart because I am a coach. What is your training plan? You can't decide to bring on somebody and not engage them, not train them. So what level of support are you planning on providing? This is a good question to ask yourself. And the second question is, how often will you provide mentor coaching meetings? Good teams meet on a regular basis, whether that's once a week, once every 2 weeks, an agreed upon plan or method on how you're going to do those mentoring and coaching trainings. Risks. We're almost near the end, folks, and we'll get to your questions. Risks. One IC may take other ICs with them and start their own agency. So that terms of agreement is going to help you be very clear about how does that work when they leave. You can't really put a non-compete in place because it's not a contract. It's not a legal binding agreement. You can certainly have an expectation, but this is all about going in with your eyes wide open, folks. If they learn the business and they get really good at it, they may look up one day themselves and say, huh, wait a minute, I could go do this just as well myself. And if you have team members in your own community, that's different than if they're spread out across a country. And hopefully you've got a great relationship with them. And that's the idea from the beginning, is if you have a good training plan, if you've done this well, good communication, you're not going to face this. They are going to have good communication with you to say, hey, I'm thinking about, what do you think? And you'll be able to talk through it. Be prepared that the relationship can come to a temporary arrangement. So in other words, the terms of agreement I mentioned to you may say, hey, this is for a 60-day trial, a 90-day trial, and then we're going to revisit it. We're going to see how it looks. How are you feeling? How am I feeling? Okay. Errors and omissions, I talked about this, but does it cover subagents? Does it cover independent contractors? Okay. Call your insurance company before adding the independent contractor. I presented this webinar once before internally here at Next Gen Travel Group, and I had some folks say to me that they had called and there was no additional cost to add an agent. But my advice, make that phone call. Be sure to notify your provider of changes. Don't depend on that, because you still need to give them the name. You need to know if there is a cost, because it could vary by state. You just need to make sure. And reputation damage. You know that saying about one bad apple? Never forget that it is your company, it is not theirs, and never acquiesce decisions about the future or vision of your company to us.
Oh, Martin, I don't know if you can still hear me. It looks like it might have just cut out. Sorry, everyone. We almost made it through without any technology issues. So close. Okay, hold on. I don't know if Martin can hear. I'm going to chat him. I'm going to see. Let me see here. Hold on. Let me message him. Hold tight, everyone, because I know we have some good questions that we want to get answered here. Oh, okay. He's coming back in.
I am here. Good God.
Oh, so fun. And my camera shut off too, so people cannot see me, but I will figure that out. So okay, go ahead, Martin. Keep it moving and grooving.
Well, we're actually at the questions slide. So that was the last slide, and I'm going to, okay.
Perfect.
It says we're viewing my screen still, but
Yep, yeah, I can still see it.
can you grab it and take
Yeah.
control? Go ahead and do that, because it's not letting me.
Oh, not
Release
letting you.
control.
Okay, hold on.
Release control.
Release it, Zoom. Okay, hold on. Now I have to pull it up. Let me get this up. And then my camera too. I know that if anyone's like, hey, I can't see you, I will figure that out here. But okay, I'm almost there. I'm opening the I'm
No,
opening.
no worries. And as you're talking, somebody had said reputation damage is where we ended. And just to finish that thought, just in case I got cut off, this is really just about making sure that you never forget that it's your company, not theirs. And I don't mean that in a mean way, right? I mean, all of us are good, reasonable people, but just never acquiesce decisions about the future of your company and the vision of your company to others. You always ask for input. Absolutely. Ask them for the input, but good leaders ask for input, take it all in, and then make a decision. Say, great, I've heard you all. This is the direction we're going. So that was really the final thought, because the final slide was, what questions do you have? And
Yeah,
hopefully I've
so
helped you out.
yeah, that totally actually really worked out. The here, I'm trying to get my good camera, but we might just have to do the old, yeah. Okay, so hold on, let me put my, this is not going to be as beautiful as the other one, so that's okay though. So thank you so much, Martin. This was awesome. It was so packed with so much information, and we have some good questions here. So, okay, I'm going to ask them, and then I'll turn off your screen for sharing once you get going answering that. But the first question that I want to ask you, because this is a really important one, is first of all, where is a good place to find an IC? Like, how do you even start that process of looking for where you can find an independent contractor?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, it depends on the personality, I think, of your agency, and what kind of business you are. Are you kind of a family oriented business? And as they say, just like they say, I'm in the arts, and sometimes I'm on stage. They say you should never perform on stage with animals or children. In travel, you should never sometimes book your own family members. Maybe that's the same in work, but I have known people who have found great success having family members or extended family members be really good contacts for that. Aside from that, the other thing that I recommend is look to your internal resources, right? Our markets are very different. So look within your market. What makes sense in your market? If it's a smaller community, I know some people that are in smaller towns, and going to your small town community paper makes more sense. If you're in a networking group, saying it in a networking situation within your networking group is really, really good way to do that as well. And then, of course, there is tried and true, like an indeed.com or something like that. If you're on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a perfect place for you to just throw it out there to say, hey, I'm looking for. But I would do it from a networked perspective. Look to your close contact network, because usually those people know good people, and those are the ones that you want.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's a really good advice there. One thing too that I totally forgot that we wanted to share at the end is I'm going to share, here's the checklist. So Martin has graciously shared a checklist download. So I just put it in the chat so everybody can get that there, just so we don't forget about that. So another question here is, this is from Jenny, and she said, so when you bring on an IC, what business name does an IC take on? That's a really good question. Like, do they take the same business name that you have, or do they typically create their own?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jenny. And usually, if you're bringing in an IC for your business and your agency, they're going to market themselves and be your agency, right? If they're going to do it under a different name, then one would question whether or not they should be their own agency. You're bringing somebody on for a specific reason. And so normally it would be under your agency's name, and they're marketing themselves as a part of your team.
Perfect. And another question here on like training. I know that there's a lot of different ways that you can like train ICs. But is there anything that you've seen other advisors do that do it really well? Like, do they have like check-ins that they do every week with them, or like events where they train, or what are some tips that you've seen other agents do?
Yeah, I think the team meeting, like a Monday morning or a Friday, Mondays or Fridays always seem to work best to have that team meeting, a touch base point, whether it's every week, every other week, depending upon the size and scope of your team. By the way, team, even if it's just you and one other person, still do those. Still have that check in. You may only need to do it every 2 weeks, but if you've got a lot of people every week having a standing meeting, even if sometimes having the meeting on the calendar is something that's 45 minutes, but it only takes 20 minutes this time because that's all anyone needed. That's okay. More time in everyone's day. But I think that's what works. And the other thing that really works is teams going to travel industry events together. The the camaraderie and the strength of a team and being able to banter and talk about what's going on, what they saw, what they learned, and how they're going to put it to use in the business is another fantastic way for teams to connect.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And yeah, just creating that culture is just so cool. Doing that. And so, okay, this question's a little more on the in the not so fun, tax the side of everything. So Sarah had asked, as an IC, we are a 1099. If we are paying another IC, how should we think about taking out money to cover the taxes we would incur?
So it's a great question, and you do have to talk to your accountant. I'm not an accountant, I'm not a tax specialist. So it is a consideration that you really should do. Now, most accountants are going to certainly say, put aside a certain amount of money and to be prepared for quarterly payments. That's most often what I know that accountant advice is. But again, exactly how much and what it is, you're going to want to talk to your accountant to know exactly what that is. But they as well would be 1099, just like you are 1099 to your host. They would be 1099, but directly to you, and talk to your accountant on those specifics.
Perfect. And then so this is another question just from James is, can my host agency prevent me from contracting with ICs that are already ICs with the host agency? So that's kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. If I'm understanding James, the IC is already an independent advisor with the host. So I've seen this happen, and I think the answer, and again, you're going to have to go to your host for their policies and rules around it, because I can see guidelines being different per host agency. So definitely go to your host to find out. But most often, um, that person is going to have to sort of change, like, let's say they have access to systems and all that. Their designation would just change. They wouldn't be, they'd still be an independent contractor, but they would be seen as an independent contractor under you directly as opposed to the host. But if that comes up, and because I've seen part timers approach a well established advisor and say, you know what, I'd like to really be part of a team. I do this part time. I just want to be part of it. Can we do it? You, as the owner, just needs to have a conversation with your host to say, how can we make this work? And it can be done in most host situations, at least in ours. I can't speak to other hosts.
Mhm. Cool. So I know that we have barely a minute left, but I was going to share one thing really quick. So
Yeah.
we have that IC checklist. So I just pulled it up here that we are sharing with everybody. And could you just really quick just kind of walk through how they would use this?
Right. In the exact order that I just went through those screens, I sort of think this is a good mental checklist that makes you think about the first thing first. Why do I even want an independent contractor? Do I want them to really be an agent, or do I need that virtual assistant? So this is going to follow the exact same flow that I talked through, just in this format of a checklist that gets you thinking about it in those steps in the exact way that I presented it.
Perfect. That's awesome. That's so nice because this is such a big thing. It's such an exciting conversation because for all of those of you who are on here, I mean, to be thinking this through, or maybe you already have ICs, that's so cool. Like you're growing your business and you're sharing the love of travel with everybody. So really cool. And lots of people like saying very informative, great webinar. So I just have to thank you again, Martin, for
Yeah.
well, let me say Coach Martin for sharing so much of your expertise. This is great and such perfect timing as we enter a new year and explore these options of like, should I get ICs? What should I be thinking about? So cool. Such a great combo.
Well, Stephanie, as always, you do a fantastic job hosting these as
Well,
well.
thank you.
It's always a pleasure being here with you all. Thank you so much. And I hope you've learned something and you can put it to use.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you want more of Coach Martin, we've actually done a podcast with him. It was like, I think it was back in the summer, and it was really good. It was about just, how to keep your productivity and time management. So highly recommend go check that out as well. So there's so much that Coach Martin has to offer us. So we thank you again.
Oh, you betcha. And I always like to sign off for everyone to share with them. From me to you, here's to your success. And I wish you all the best.
I love that. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a good
Thanks.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, Thanksgiving.
Bye.
See ya.